They rigged the election. I didn't rig the election. They rigged the election. What they do is they rig the election, and then they go around getting people and persecuting people and prosecuting people that did nothing wrong. They rigged the election. These are crooked people.
Former President Donald Trump repeating lies about the 2020 election during an interview with News Nation last week. As the clock ticks towards November 5th, Trump and his allies have been ramping up their public attacks on the American election system, setting up a possible battle over the presidential race results. Now, in 2020, Trump's legal team lost cases in Arizona, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan. Of the 62 lawsuits they filed trying to overturn election results, 61 failed. Just last week, special counsel Jack Smith said the then sitting president laid the groundwork to overturn the results of the 2020 election even before he lost. A new court filing claims Trump resorted to crimes in an effort to cling to power. With weeks to go before the next election, new lawsuits that could impact the November results already underway across the U.S. Anish Parikh is the founding partner of Parikh Law Group, who specializes in election law, among other topics. Anish, good to see you. It's been a while.
Thank you so much
Welcome
for having
back.
me, Paul.
So we're a month away, as I said, from the election, and already we've had like 120 lawsuits filed by mostly Republicans, some Democrats, across 26 states. Why are we seeing challenges before a single vote has been counted?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been insane to see and just to monitor. But for us election practitioners, of course, it's super exciting. But what we're seeing this time around is it seems as if there is a preemptive effort, essentially, to get in front of the election this time around.
Preemptive or proactive?
Or proactive. That's a better way to say it, I would say. But the idea, I think, for the Republicans and Trump's side is to really just come out swinging, lay some sort of foundation, set it up for the future, just in case he doesn't win. He wants to have lawsuits to fall back on to challenge the entire electoral process.
But, Anish, isn't just the very filing of these lawsuits, their existence, doesn't that work to sow distrust in the system anyway?
I think so. I mean, I think Americans, when they see the news about over 100 lawsuits being filed already, I think it really does serve to disenfranchise our electoral process. I think it pokes concerns in the minds of a lot of voters as to whether or not the results of the election are even going to be accepted. How soon after the election are we going to know the results? Who's going to be our president at the end of the day? I think that's the biggest concern that these lawsuits has and the impact that they have on the American voters.
So these early preventative, proactive lawsuits that are getting filed, is there a positive side to it? Meaning, if something does go wrong, it's like, well, we're already in the system, we're able to work it. Is that part of what perhaps the mission is here, so that we're not filing all these things after results have been counted?
You know, I think so. If you take a look at and analyze what the lawsuits are about, a lot of them are largely filed by the Republican parties, and they are attacks at various rules or regulations concerning the entire electoral process, from how are votes counted with absentee ballots to what are the powers of actual election officials. So I think a lot of them have grave ramifications if they're decided. I think very few would be decided prior to the election. And I think that at the end of the day, we're gonna see what we saw last time around, which is one by one these cases start going away and falling off.
Well, let's go with what we might see on the day of, because as we know, Trump has made election integrity a key issue. The Republican National Committee reports they have over 165,000 volunteer poll watchers be hanging around these polls. Democrats' effort, they're called voter protection. They want to make sure voters can vote. What might this mean for voters who show up to a site and they got all these protection voter people around? I mean, does that make for a mess, or does that make for comfort?
You know, I think it really does. I think what our system is trying to do is improve at the end of the day. And from the Democrats' side of things, they want to see voter protection. And what that means is they want voters to be able to go to the polls. They want them to not have any intimidation factors. They want them to be able to freely vote. On the other side of the coin are the Republicans, and what they want is they're attacking voter integrity. So they're attacking it more at a law level based on the policies and the procedures in place in each state, because as we know, election laws are governed by state law. And the Republicans are now trying to essentially attack a lot of the processes and procedures in place.
Let me give you an easy question. When Republicans are asked whether they will certify the results, elected officials, they say, well, absolutely, if we have a free and fair election, of course, I'll certify. There's the caveat. My easy question for you is, what is a free and fair election?
That's the million-dollar question, I think, and it might be years until we actually experience what that actually is. But, you know, as it's been defined before, it's free of coercion, essentially. There's no voter suppression. Every individual voter, there's political freedoms. And most important, and I think relevant to this particular upcoming election, is everyone has to be willing and able to accept the results of the election.
There's a certification issue. A lot of people are talking about certification. One of my curiosities is on the local, state level, is that even an option? Is it like you don't have to certify if you think something's wrong? I always thought certification was something you have to do. I know at the congressional level on January 6th, it's really just a ceremonial thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, according to most election laws statewide, certification is a mandatory task. And what the Republicans are trying to do is they're trying to expand that. They're trying to expand that by giving local election officials additional rights. And that's what we're seeing, for example, out of Georgia. The case out of Georgia specifically attacks and tries to expand the job descriptions of the local election officials to the point where if they believe that there's any possibility of any voter disenfranchisement, Georgia is saying, well, these election officials, they have the right to then conduct a reasonable inquiry and delay the certification of these ballots. So, you know, the Democrats are obviously coming in and challenging that and their whole argument is, well, this is a mandatory task that's enacted by our state legislators. So
what happens here in Illinois if something allegedly goes wrong? What are the procedures here?
I mean, essentially, there's a whole court system and a court process in place to challenge the results of an election. Most often, those are going to be the most appropriate forums to challenge those findings or those rulings or those results. So there is a process and procedure in place, and I believe there's a process and procedure in place across all 50 states.
If Trump should lose, the challenges will be numerous, to be sure. What do you think the impact will be on getting the final election results?
You know, what I fear the most is when is our country going to know who our president is, actually? And I think the more the Republicans challenge the process, challenge the results, the longer it's going to delay us finding what that result is. So, you know, I think we just have to wait and see kind of what happens closer to the time. I can tell you this with certainty. If Trump loses the election, there's going to be a plethora of additional cases that are filed.
And you'll be a busy man.
I will be a busy man.
Anish Parikh, thanks for coming in. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll be in touch with you as this goes on. We're going to take one more break, and after this, Mike Madigan's highly anticipated corruption trial finally gets underway. What to watch when the week begins.